Hello, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Camille.
Welcome
Welcome to
to
Two Studios Art Channel.
Hit like and subscribe to get our free demos and tutorials right to your inbox.
Happy painting! Hello friends, welcome to Two Studios Art. I'm Camille and today we are going to be painting roses with watercolor. I have 3 brushes that I'm going to use. I have this brush here, which is a number 12. I have this brush here, which is a number 6, and this smaller one here, which is a number 2. These are all round brushes. I'm going to be using these beautiful Yarka watercolor paints. These are a Russian paint and they are semi-moist but highly pigmented and very economical in value. So these are one of my favorite watercolors to use. I am going to be mixing my paint on a white ceramic plate. I really like doing this. It just washes clean, whether it's for a watercolor or acrylic. It's nice, I can get more space to see the colors I'm making. And I'm using some Strathmore watercolor paper. Let's get started. Today I am going to paint some peachy roses. So I'm going to mix some orange. And I have 2 reds on this palette. One of them here is a magenta, which is a very bluish red. This one is a more orangey red and is a bit more like a cadmium, so I'm going to mix a little bit of this in just to flesh out this orange a little bit. Now when I start painting flowers, I usually just like to start with some blobs. So I pretty much just find a spot on the paper and make a blob. And I keep putting blobs in where I want the flowers to be. They don't need to be exactly symmetrical or exactly round, just little blobs of paint of different sizes. These are going to be our blossoms. Now these roses are not going to be like a traditional bouquet coming out of a vase. They're just going to be imagined flowers on a vine, sort of the way I might imagine them in nature, or when I've seen them on a hike or something. Sometimes I see a trailing wild rose and they're so beautiful and brambly, and so I'm just gonna imagine that. This is an imagined rose bush here. So I have some blobs that I like for my flowers, and I'm also gonna add in, just add a little bit more color here, some buds, because there's something just so lovely about rose buds. So I'm going to do these pointy ovals. These are going to be the rose buds. And you just put them in wherever you feel like it. Wherever you see a little space that you just think, I could imagine a rosebud coming out of there, and put it in. I often like to put in a couple because a lot of the time roses grow, like the end of the stem has several flowers coming off of it, so I like to put these rosebuds in little groups. And I might add some more in later on too. I don't really have a plan, except what looks nice at the time. Okay, so that's our start. The next thing I'm going to do is, again with the same brush, is I'm going to select a center color. And oftentimes the center color is yellow, which I just love. It makes me so happy when I see that yellow center. It's like a little golden heart in the middle. So I'm going to make a very yellowy orange here. And I'm just going to take that color and I'm going to put it, a bit more yellow. Where am I going to put it? I am going to put it wherever I think the center of the flower is. And depending on how I'm looking at the flower, it might not be in the middle. This is going to give me a little bit of a direction for what my flower is going to look like and how it's situated on this bramble. I'm angling most of them, so I'm imagining them looking off the page, but not all. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm gonna take my number 6 brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of a darker orange, and I'm going to do some swirly arc shapes. And these are going to give me a feeling of where the petals are going to go. And we're just going to go wet in wet here with these little arc shapes. And it's going to bleed around a little bit. We're not going to worry about it. So start at the center, kind of underneath my yellow golden center. And then I'm swirling around and doing these arc shapes. This one looks a bit like an egg. Well, you're going to be a rose. This is not a precision piece. It's not photorealism. It's more how I feel about the flowers and what I think they look like. So again, I just tend to start with just underneath the golden part because that will be a little bit darker. And then I just swirl out from there with these arcs. Now this one here will go here. I'm leaving this till last because it's lost a bit of its definition, so I'm just letting it settle a little bit. And this guy too. Just going to put a bit more paint on here. Which direction are you going in? We'll go with this. And lastly, this one. There we go. That gives us a bit of a sense of the flowers. Now what I might just do a little bit is just go a little bit into where I imagine the base of these buds are and add a little bit of extra color. This will just give them a bit of depth. To me, these ones are hanging down a little bit, so I just want to even out the shape here. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is add some stems. And I'm going to use my number 2 brush for the stems. This palette has 2 greens in it, a more yellowy green and a more bluish green. I'm going to start with this yellowy green. There. And I'm going to add in a little bit of yogurt. And wet my brush up. And we are going to imagine how these flowers attach together. I'm going to start with these ones. There's the base. And these attach like that. Sometimes it's a little easier to start with the buds because you can really tell where the bottom of the flower is. May as well go through all the buds and just get a sense of their direction. I'm going to vaguely attach these. Oh, and I'm moving on to this one because it's right here, so it makes sense. Just vaguely attach these. Again, this is not photorealism here, so it doesn't need to be an exact science, but it is a good idea to have a general idea of how your flowers attach to each other, because that will make your painting make sense. So I'm imagining that these buds are going to attach down here. Okay, so we've got all of our buds. I'm going to go around now and start adding in the stems and where these flowers attach. I'm starting with the one that makes the most amount of sense. Sometimes some are easier than others to kind of figure out that way or to imagine. And so I'm starting with those. Okay, this one is angled this way, so it's going to come down. This one's angled down. It's going to be coming up. This one, it could be coming from anywhere. And lastly, this guy. Okay, so now that we have a sense of that, I am going to add some leaves. So I think what I'm going to do here is just add a little bit more paint to my brush. And I'm going to start adding some leaves in. Now, rose leaves tend to have a little bit of a jagged edge on them. It's coming up a bit dark at first. So I'm finding if I start at the base and then kind of make these swooping motions, you get a little bit of a sense of the jagged leaves without really having to do very much. I find if I go the other way, it doesn't work quite as well. I usually drag them out a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to imagine some leaves are coming out on their own stem. Okay, let's add some more leaves up this way. I really like this depth of color. I'm going to keep going with the dark leaves. I'm actually going to add a little bit of this red into this green to darken it in a really rich way. Keep going, oopsie-daisy, keep going around and around. Wherever you see a spot, you can add a leaf. You can add big leaves, little leaves, leaves that are straight, leaves that curl. Nature has all kinds, so you can just feel free to just put them in because any one of them will be right. And any one will make sense. I'm going to add a bit more of this red in here. Let's get a nice dark color. I'm going to go back into some of these buds and bring out some depth of just at the bottom of them. Okay. After I do some of these leaves, I'm going to add some more color to my flowers. When I go back and forth like this, that's to give the other element a chance to dry. So my flowers are, well, they're not perfectly dry, which is totally fine. They've had a little opportunity to dry up a little bit. Change up my green a little. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my slightly bigger brush. I'm actually going to go back to the number 6 brush here, medium size. And I'm going to go in with a fairly deep color because we need to bring out the centers. Again, this is where it's really worthwhile to don't skimp on your paint in this part. You don't want to cover up your beautiful yellow center, but the middle of a flower is often where you see the most luscious color. So we just want to bring that in, like really bring in that luscious color right there. Gives it a sense of depth. Just underneath where that golden center is, and go around to each one and do it. They all deserve the same. And then what I like to do is I like to swirl around, leaving a bit of space close to the center. This way you can imagine some more, you can see, imagine the interior of the flower as if you were looking down into it. I'm also going to go in again and darken up these buds. Some of them don't need it, but it doesn't hurt to add a little bit more definition. I find that this is a very good time if you feel like you have gaps and would actually like a little bit more flower activity, then this is a good time to put it in, whether it's like buds or like right here. I feel like I just would like to see another suggestion of another flower over there. And feeling something in here. I just not sure what yet, but I'm just going to add the suggestion of a flower as if there was one behind. Try not to get too much of my green bleeding through here. Just to fill in that space a little bit. I also might add a little bud right here. Can add another bud there. And that seems pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to go back out and I'm going to add a little bit of blue here to over here. I'm going to mix my green. I'm just trying to change the tone of the greens so that you get variation. You can do this by adding more blues or more yellows. Just play with it and see what colors come up and what your eye likes to see. But the plants will have different variations in their color of their greens, and then also depending on the light or the shadows. Now here I'm just adding in suggestions of a leaf using this slightly altered color for interest. It doesn't need to be exactly precise. Just adding it in. Filling in the spaces with these beautiful little leaves. That one got a little bit weird there. Let's try and even it out a bit. in the spaces. Trying to keep it light and a little asymmetrical, because that's what life is like. While at the same time keeping it pleasing to the way your eye sees it. Now I think I'm very close to being done. This part here has gotten a little bit muddy, and I think I'm going to need to probably wait for it to dry a bit before going back in, but I am going to go in here and just add a bit more to my flowers before being finished. You can add little leaves of all sizes. You're just filling in the space. Oh right, there's this little bud that I put in here, but it's not attached to anything, so we're just going to attach it. Same thing with this. Oh, and that one. Okay, so now I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to get a watered down color. Maybe just for fun, I'll add a little bit of this yellow in here. Nice and watered down. And I'm just going to expand on my petals a little bit. This is just going to tie these flowers together, leaving some lighter areas and some darker areas. Kind of like putting in a little rosy wash. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do right now might still be a bit too wet, so I'm actually going to take my paper here and just dab this, just to take some of this excess water off of here without trying to dab up my other flowers, because I don't like the way that's bled a little bit. So I'm going to just dry that off and then go back in with my green. Hopefully it's dry enough for me to just redo these leaves without them bleeding too much into the rest of the paper. If I was feeling a little less hasty, I'd probably set this aside for a few minutes and then come back in about half an hour or so and redo this, but if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of time, so you don't have a lot of time, but you want to fit this into your life, don't worry about perfection. It's going to be beautiful no matter what. All right, I'm going to call it done. So here we have some lovely and fresh roses in watercolor. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed doing this exercise at home. Happy painting!